Sporting Journal Radio, presented by Onyx.
All right, so we need to talk about North Dakota because I miss spending time in North Dakota. I lived over there for 10, 12 years or so, did a lot of hunting and fishing over there, and moved back to Minnesota, and I enjoy where I live, of course, and Minnesota's got great outdoor opportunities, but there's something about the Dakotas, and man, I fell in love with North Dakota while I was there. And to talk about some of the big changes, well, it depends on who you talk to about how big these changes are, but I feel like it was pretty big news to talk about this. So I'm going to bring on Doug Leier right now from the North Dakota Game and Fish Department, our old radio pal. Doug, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Always good to visit with you, T-Bone. I always enjoy the conversation, man.
Doug, we are 2 weeks away from my 500th show, Sporting Journal Radio.
Wow. Gosh, the Kardashians wish they were you, man.
Yeah, I bet.
They've been married and divorced like 7 times in that.
It's the first time the Kardashians have ever come up on this show.
Hopefully the last.
Holy. And the reason I bring it up, though, Doug, is because this all spawned back in the day. The first outdoor radio show I did on the fan affiliate up in Fargo. You were a part of that. And then we did stuff on some of the other stations that I worked at up there. And then, of course, you've been on this show many times. So we're throwing a party coming up here. April 9th is the 500th Sporting Journal radio show, and we're going to throw a party up at Lake of the Woods. And I was just telling these guys, Dan and David are sitting over there, and I was just telling these guys, because we've been, chasing snows around a little bit and talking about maybe doing some trips over to the Dakotas a little bit. And I said, you know what? I don't even care if the snows are in Saskatchewan or if the snows are still in Missouri. We need to go hunt North Dakota a little bit because I miss being up there, Doug.
And I've always enjoyed visiting with you, and you're one of the guys that get it. Fortunately, in North Dakota, from your time, I think a couple of things have happened. Either the statute of limitations has worn out, or they forgot about some of the things that you've done. So I think you're welcome now. I think you're welcome. It's a combination of those two.
Oh, good. I can finally come back. Perfect.
Right.
Good.
Now,
well, When I talk about snow geese and I talk about North Dakota, from the reports I'm hearing, North Dakota's had birds. Saskatchewan's already seen some snow geese. Now that's your front edge, your lead edge adults, which are always kind of hard to hunt. It's really cool to see. I always encourage people to go watch that spring migration because it's fun to see, even if sometimes they're hard to hunt. But one thing that you've always said has always stuck with me when it comes to snows, and people get all worried about being too late when that lead edge rolls through. And you've always talked about people shooting snows on the last weekend of the season. So there's generally always some old, I should say, some young birds that stick around late into the season.
And you're spot on, because actually at the Sportsman Show at the Fargo Dome, I just ran into one of my friends that he's been doing that exact same thing, is not necessarily waiting until the last weekend of the season, but if he's had time, he's always gone out the last weekend of the season. And if you're willing to, fill up the truck with gas and spend some time out there,
not with these prices,
9 times out of 10, right? And that's the problem this year, quite frankly. But if you're willing to spend the money and spend the time, you're going to be able to find some birds. It might be in northern North Dakota, it might be Devil's Lake, might be southern North Dakota, but there's going to be birds that are going to be straggling and coming on through on the backside.
Well, that's the name of the game, whether it's snow goose or Canada goose or mallards or even fishing for that matter. Being able to go out and scout and put some miles on and try to find whatever game you're chasing after, you have to be able to put your time in scouting.
I was actually earlier this week texting with a friend of mine in central North Dakota, and he was relaying how what's also changed so much. Our spring snow goose hunt in North Dakota, I think it started in 1999, and one of the good things for the sport of spring snow goose hunting, and one of the good things from the wildlife management point of view, is actually the electronics and the immediate communication, because you can find the birds so much quicker than you could back in 1999 with all of the cell phone applications and all of the communication tools available. And this is actually one of those hunts, a conservation order, that we want to get people to the birds. We want to get them hunting those birds, and which, kind of is a flip side from the fall, when you have people that want to try to hold back on information and want to try to save it for themselves. there's plenty of snow geese to go around, and I guess maybe this is where sharing comes into it. And right now is probably definitely in that peak window of getting out there and finding the birds. But by no stretch of the imagination, if you can't get out this weekend and you can't get out early next week, you're not going to miss the boat. I'm pretty confident. I've been wrong on a lot of things in my life, but you're not going to miss the boat.
You guys lost snow fast. What do you got on the ground up there now?
Man, you're telling me. We lost, I would venture to say, like, eastern North Dakota had a lot more snow than central and western North Dakota. But I would venture, even in the Red River Valley in eastern North Dakota, we probably lost 80 to 90% of our snow in about 10 to 12 days. It didn't turn on hot, but it turned on steady, and we shrunk the snowpack. The birds showed up, and prior to that, we were thinking in early March, there wasn't much snowpack in western North Dakota. There was a lot in eastern North Dakota. The first snow geese that showed up did kind of pop on the radar, maybe a little bit further central and west than we would have expected. But after that, the snow melted, the birds from southeastern, south central North Dakota, even some great reports from people that I trust in western Minnesota that were finding snow geese to hunt.
There's no birds in Minnesota. You shut your mouth.
They don't come through.
So when I lived in Fargo, Doug, now this is back in the days of the 100-year floods that were happening every other year. A quick thaw like that was a big worry. Now, obviously, there's some new infrastructure in place that's prepared for that type of scenario. Do they even worry about floods up there? Is everything done? Are they still working on that, or what's the situation?
They're still working on the diversion, and we still worry about floods, but it's actually been dry, and it's been drought that has been kind of the word that's been much more popular right now. We had a good snowpack. We had a good snow in eastern North Dakota, but the way the thaw has happened, it's been pretty steady and pretty manageable, and obviously the infrastructure has been built up. But that we still have places. If you're coming to North Dakota snow goose hunting, you're still going to find muddy roads. So we're going to still ask people to try to stay on the hard surfaces and try not to rut up the roads. But we probably aren't going to have the washed out culverts and the washed out bridges like we have in some high volume water years. So that's the good news. The bad news is the high fuel prices and the way the birds are going to be spread out all over the place. But those are the cards that we're playing. That's the hand that we were dealt.
Man, I watched a truck drive into one of those washed out culverts one time, and luckily the kid was okay, but just had no idea. And all of a sudden there was just no more road.
They just
and the front end of the truck dropped in, and it caught on the other side of the road, and he was just sitting there dangling as 4 feet below him, just rushing water, just washed the road right out. So gets a little wild. How's the electronic posting been going over there?
We actually just started sign up number 2, and that goes through July 1st of this year. And all things considered, when you realize that electronic posting in North Dakota, we were the first state in the United States, and this was really something that was probably put into motion in a matter of 3 to 6 months. So all the reports that we're hearing from the landowners, I don't want to say all, most of the reports that we hear from landowners, that we're hearing from hunters, have been pretty positive. No significant changes this year. We kind of take things in baby steps, but we didn't have any real big, huge red lights that came on that said, whoa, this didn't work. And I would actually even paint myself a little bit pleasantly surprised how well it's going so far.
Well, you can read more about it at sportingjournalradio.com. If you're going to end up going to North Dakota, you want to make sure you are aware of the electronic posting rules in North Dakota, and we've got it laid out there. Oh, look, we even did an interview with this guy right here back when it all was announced. From Loess Hills or Loess Bluffs, what do they call it?
Loess Bluffs.
Loess Bluffs, the old Squaw Creek in Missouri, to reports in Nebraska, South Dakota, and now North Dakota. I heard from a guy about seeing a snow goose in town. He was in town, and there was a snow goose just laying, I think it was in somebody's yard. So he walked up to it like, what the heck, and the thing was alive. let him walk right up to it. He picked it up and he kind of tossed it in the air to, try to set it free or whatever. And it barely flew and it landed on the other side of the road and laid right back down. So obviously this avian flu, this bird flu, is a serious thing. From the Game and Fish Department's perspective, how do you handle bird flu or reports of bird flu, or what are you telling hunters to be aware of?
First and foremost, we really appreciate the eyes and the ears of the hunters that are out there, because anybody that hunts knows how widespread birds and bird migration is. And when you have a limited staff, to be out there and try to monitor everything, we so depend on the eyes and the ears of the hunters. So, a situation like this with a goose that's acting abnormally, whether it's in Nebraska, South Dakota, or North Dakota, biologists want to hear about it and know about it. Odds are, if there's one bird, there's going to be more than that. So when you have multiple birds that are acting abnormally, then we need to know about. So what you have is a kind of like a playbook where you get the report, you investigate. If you can get a sample of that bird, then that gets sent into a lab. We live in a world where we're in a click world where you expect to have, results at the snap of a finger. Our responsibility is to try to make sure that what we're putting out there is consistent and accurate information. So until we actually get test results back, we're not going to, we may suspect it's avian influenza, but where we're sitting right now, and, this speaks to the same protocol that biologists are going to have, whether it's in South Dakota, Minnesota, North Dakota, is when you see multiples of dead birds. Just seeing one dead bird isn't a big red flag. One bird acting strange like that goose is, that's something that we'd appreciate a phone call on. But then when you start to see multiples of dead birds, you see 6, 10, a dozen, you see more than a dozen dead birds in a location, then please, by all means, whether it's contacting North Dakota Game and Fish, South Dakota Game and Fish Parks, Minnesota DNR, wherever you're at, we do need to know about it. Don't just think, well, somebody else probably saw it, somebody else can report it. Don't think, well, it's not that big of a deal. We do want to get those reports in. I've heard secondhand of reports that have been coming in, and unfortunately, I'm thinking moving forward, we're going to probably hear even more of that.
Yeah, well, supposedly there isn't harm to humans, but I'll tell you what, if I found one of those sick birds, I wouldn't eat it. And they do recommend you wear gloves if you do handle one of those birds. But
yeah, I mean, absolutely. The world has changed. You going back into the day of how you used to function. You can still do that, but it's not recommended. So as little contact from your skin to whether it's meat or blood or anything raw, by all means, try to make sure that you're wearing gloves. And then when you're cooking, make sure you're getting meat up to 165 degrees. And I guess I'm not thinking there's many people out there that are gonna eat the raw gizzard of a snow goose. But hey, I'll be the first to tell you, don't do that.
Dan, I'll give you $5 American to eat the next.
You got 10, you got a deal.
What?
Yeah. Now here comes on TikTok. Yeah. The Snow Goose Gizzard Challenge.
Gross. If it gets us famous, it's all for the views.
That's right.
Death
do it for the show.
Ratings,
hey,
right?
Death equals ratings, as I always say.
Take one for the team.
All right.
Hear more at sportingjournalradio.com or wherever you get podcasts. 852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties, all in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX.